Hi, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join us as we kick off 2022. Wow, I'm going to have to get used to saying that. Today, we're going to explore how to accelerate your workloads with NetApp and AWS. So companies are adapting to uncertainty by becoming more nimble and more flexible. They see that moving applications to the cloud or building new ones in the cloud is essential to staying competitive. Now, if you were able to catch AWS reInvent this year, you saw some remarkable tech showcased. And you'd certainly expect that from a juggernaut like AWS, right? One highlight for me was the disruptive new AWS file service powered by NetApp. That's Amazon Fsx for NetApp Ontap. But also impressive were releases from NetApp, including the FinOps solutions to automate and optimize cloud spend. But if you missed reInvent, or you just need a better understanding of what's now possible, I've got you covered. First, join my conversation with AWS Wayne Duso as we explore how to simplify infrastructure management and reduce complexity in the cloud. Next, we'll demo how to get started in AWS and show you how easy it is to extend on-premises workloads to the cloud, and look at a data protection use case, showing you how Fsx for Ontap can foil ransomware and secure your data across your entire stack. And also, what should you consider as you craft your cloud strategy? And what's available today to help you on that journey? I'll also put those questions to AWS Wayne Duso and ask him where the new Fsx for Ontap fits in all of this. So let's begin, shall we? We talked before this interview, and you said you'd met with about 16 customers, I think, or companies that while you've been over here. And one of the things I asked you, and I'd be delighted if you could share it with the audience, was what are those one or two themes? What was the kind of the big thing that you kind of picked up on that was consistent or certainly came out in several of those kind of meetings? Maybe you could share with us a few things.
So the most surprising thing for me was people, when they look at, especially when we're talking about Fsx for Ontap, they look at that offering and they ask questions not understanding how simple the transition will be. Right. They're so used to a mental model that they've had for years, and that requires planning, procurement, installation, management of the physical assets, as well as then management of the relationship with their customer in terms of their data. And when you explain to them that they don't need to worry about any of those things anymore, they don't need to worry about planning floor space and procuring equipment and worrying about whether the physical infrastructure is up and running and patched and being maintained correctly, but they can focus all their time on making sure that the data services that they're delivering to their customers are what they need. They can't quite grasp all of that yet. They've spent so much of their career thinking about these other elements, and as part of what we want to do is to, one, make it super easy for them to adopt Fsx for Ontap. Yep. And we want to make sure they understand that they can spend their time on the activities that are most, quite frankly, fun and rewarding.
On this kind of optimization thing, because we sort of touched on it, and it's something I'm particularly passionate about from the sort of the sustainability angle. What is it that you think people can do to be better optimized in the way that they use the cloud? Without kind of going down any particular direction, a lot of people, I think, sort of went in with the kind of eyes wide open and, checkbooks open to some degree. And now I think there's a growing rise of kind of FinOps and different groups that are starting to look at kind of cloud spend and be more analytical about it. What's some sort of suggestions you can give around how should people be thinking about optimizing when they're moving in or when they're currently in?
So everybody has a different journey to the cloud. A lot of early customers initially wanted to ensure that they were using the cloud for backup or a disaster recovery business continuance case. So they would have an on-prem environment and they'd have an in-cloud environment. Those folks would optimize for a particular, whether it was RPO or RTO, they were optimizing for something very specific. Yeah. As active workloads, moving from a hybrid environment to a full cloud environment, for those workloads, then you're there, and now you want to optimize for different things. You want to optimize for speed, agility of transforming your organization. You want to figure out how you can innovate more. I want to embrace containers. I want to embrace serverless computing. How do I do that?
Yeah.
You know, to your point, the tool set is there. It's easy to do. You don't have to go acquire anything to start. You just need to start using it. Now you start using it, you say, well, you know, are we using it effectively? Are we using it efficiently? Right? So customers then look at the capabilities and the features that we have around efficiency. So again, looking at things like intelligent tiering.
Yeah.
You know, the assurance with intelligent tiering is that you get the best performance price ratio without having to think about it. The only thing you have to think about is turning it on.
Right.
We're not turning it off if it's on by default. Mm-hmm. So we want to make it even easier for folks to optimize.
Optimize by default, almost.
By default.
Yeah.
You want to secure by default. You want to be optimized by default.
Yeah.
Right? You want all these things to be easy for folks. Awareness should be there, right? There needs to be metrics and indicators that that's happening so that you can understand what impact you're having by using those capabilities. But we want to provide those capabilities so you don't have to think about it.
That's a great way to look at it. So it's optimizing for the kind of the things you do and don't need to do as much as the infrastructure that's kind of underpinning it. So now that we are a first-party service, there was obviously a real desire for both companies to say, this is something that we need to do. This is something that's important to both of us. You know, how did that come about? Is that something you could kind of elaborate on a little bit more from your perspective?
We can, and we're very excited for NetApp to be a first-party service within AWS.
Yep.
You know, this is a conversation we started a few years ago. So this didn't happen.
This isn't new, right?
This did not happen overnight, and this has been a fantastic partnership. From the very beginning of the dialogues we had through our partner team and your executives to understand the value, the need, the customer need. This is all driven out of customer need, mm-hmm. Which is how we do 90% of the capabilities we deliver to customers every day come from their voice. You know, we implement their you know, we solve their problems, you know, based on listening to what they need and delivering that to them. And there was a whole set of customers, your customers, our customers, now mutual customers, that would come to us and say, you know, we have decades of trust. We have decades of value. We have decades of learning that are invested in Ontap, invested in NetApp products. And we need to carry that forward because it works. It works for us. There's no reason to change it. You know, the old engineering adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Mm-hmm. And it was, you know, well better than that. So when we sat down and we looked at what the customers were telling us, and we were talking to your executives, it became very clear that we needed to find a way to make this work. And I couldn't be prouder of the teams, both companies, and the collective team, because it is a team that does this between both companies, in what they built and now what they're operating. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, it really has. And I think, you know, when I look at it from, you know, just sort of a high level thing, I think, you know, NetApp has always kind of looked kind of from sort of on-premises towards the cloud and said we want to help people go from where they are today to wherever they want to get to on that journey. And of course, AWS is looking at it from the other side, I guess, is where we have AWS Cloud, but actually we also want to help people kind of looking back in the other direction. And it kind of feels to me as if this is it's that sort of the meeting of both.
It is.
And you say, well, if you take kind of NetApp on-premises technology with Fsx Ontap, actually it gives us the ability to solve the problems regardless of where the customers are on kind of any point between those two areas.
You know, it's really interesting. You use the term, and you said NetApp on-prem technology. And when I look at Ontap, I actually look at Ontap as being an incredible data management platform.
Software defined, yeah.
It is, right? And so you're really bringing, you know, years of excellence in data management and access to that data, you know, in very creative and performant ways. And you're bringing those capabilities to the cloud. And so the value proposition that is Ontap now is fully realized as a first-party offering on AWS. And customers have access to all of that capability through the CLI, through the API, through the consoles that they're used to, you know, interfacing with, as well as now through the AWS console and our APIs and our CLIs. And what they can do with that equals and now betters what they were doing before on-prem, not because of any magic, but because the elasticity of the cloud because of the fully managed capabilities of the cloud. All of those other skills that we talked about earlier that they've honed over the years that aren't that much fun.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about any of those anymore. They can take all of their knowledge in how to manage data for customers, how to get value out of data for customers. That's what they can bring forward, right? And so we are marrying the best of our partnership for years with Cvo and what we do best, which is how to run cloud scale infrastructure and services. We've married those two things together. Customers now have the best of both.
And we've seen just in the first 3 weeks after we made the announcement of Fsx for Ontap, I think we had 1,600 signups, within 3 weeks, which was, 1.1 petabytes of data, which is phenomenal in a very, very short period of time. So, equally very excited to see people's enthusiasm and kind of embracing this. So.
And by the way, I watch those metrics every day.
I was going to say, yeah.
Because we measure on the penny and the second, so we watch things very carefully. And
so you're going to tell me it's 1,684 or something?
I'm not going to tell you the exact number today, but I will tell you that how our mutual customers, how new customers to AWS, existing long-standing customers for NetApp, have embraced this offering at the speed at which they have done it.
Yeah.
We went from customers being on-prem to in production in days. In days. I mean, usually, people will run POCs for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, and they'll figure out what they want to do. Yeah. These customers were on the platform, had their data up and running, had their applications in production in days. That's why we're seeing the acceleration, because it's that easy. So, but the journey is important. And this is, one size does not fit all. A lot of the anxiety and fear that people have is that they think there is a path and they have to walk that path.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that it's their path. They can, how they want to embrace value, how they want to migrate, how they want to have a hybrid environment, whether they want a cloud burst. What model are they looking for? How is that going to help them? Part of my conversations this week over here in the UK has been with customers along each of these dimensions. There are some customers that are like, hey, I can now do DR using NetApp on both ends. Yes, you can, quickly. And with SnapMirror and like tools, it's very, very simple. Right? For those customers that are looking to migrate a workload or two, they want to try it out. We just talked about customers that did it in days. Yeah. Those folks haven't moved their entire estate. They've moved an application, maybe 2 workloads to AWS. And for those customers that are looking to go all in, once they run those initial POCs or get the first couple applications going, their confidence level goes so high that you almost have to constrain their innovation. Right? It's like, wait a minute, we can do this now. It's like, yes, you can. Right? Yeah. So we'll embrace any of those paths because they're all valid. Right? They're all the right path for the customers. So for those that are building hybrid, the ability for them to build a hybrid by having the cloud version be their DR site or their business continuance site is something that we're seeing. Yeah. And the ability to move data back and forth is incredibly simple with the tools that you have provided for years for your customers to do so. Right? This is not new. This is not new for you guys at all. Right? And for customers that are looking to cloud burst for compute, we also are starting to see customers that have NetApp on-prem, lots of it, and what they want to do is they want to expand their compute capability on the data that they currently have on-prem. So what they're doing is they're using a SnapMirror to move some of the data up. Yeah. They're running large compute jobs across that data, and then they're moving the diffs back down on-prem. That's a common pattern as well. And we see it in both directions.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen that for ActiveIQ, which is our intelligence platform, our MLOps platform. And we do exactly that. We have a bit of a data lake on premises, but then what we want to do is make sure we can get that data out to AWS, borrow your compute or rent your compute for a period of time to process that and then bring the deltas back. So, it's a good example. Everybody is in a different part of the journey. So
we're all on a journey.
We're all on a journey, yeah. So, okay, let's pick up on this one. What do you recommend is the most ideal workloads to move to the cloud?
I'm going to give you the engineering answer. It depends. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So what is a company trying to do by moving workloads to the cloud? Are they trying to increase business velocity or agility? Is it a cost effectiveness need? Or is it an innovation need? Some companies engage the cloud initially for cost reasons. Very common.
Yeah.
I talked earlier about the data protection or business continuance use case. A lot of times that is done for cost efficiency reasons. Maybe they're maintaining a DR site in a colo somewhere. And they look at that and it's like they're paying for all of this capacity all the time, physical equipment all the time, and they've never used it. They've run game days and that's it.
Yeah.
And they're like, can't we do this more cost effectively? So they look at AWS and they're like, well, we can build that in same infrastructure, software defined, and we can spin most of that down. And then when we need a DR site, using CloudFormation and other tools that we have, they can spin an entire organization,
right,
let alone an application, let alone storage only. They can spin an entire organization up within the cloud at a much reduced cost to their business because they can flex into that environment. That's one way we see people doing it. Innovation. If you want to start experimenting with or embracing newer technologies, whether it's containers or serverless computing or ML, AI, pick any of those. Quantum.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Go on.
I'm not going to do it. If you want to embrace those newer technologies, newer opportunities, you want to innovate around them. How much quicker can you do that by going to the cloud? The services are there. You take all of the skills that you already have, your development skills, your ability to design, architect, build, and test. You have it at your disposal immediately. You don't have to ask for it. You don't have to wait for it. And as an organization, you can put controls around that so it doesn't get crazy.
Yeah.
But your people who have amazing ideas have the opportunity to engage the speed of their own minds and realize those results immediately. That's an innovation journey. And then there are companies that are looking just to be more agile. Right? They want their business to move faster. And much like innovation, they can move faster because the tools are there. They can quickly move.
Let's kind of think about one question. We'll start off with something technical, right? What's the difference between Fsx, Ontap, and Cvo is a question I'm often asked. So I'll give you my kind of thought around it, and maybe you can sort of think about it as well. The way I look at it, it's about, for me, it's a control thing. And we've sort of talked about this to some degree. There are going to be some environments where customers have fairly complex environments where release levels, even for something like Ontap, for SnapMirror replications, they have to have control of that. So if they're creating a hybrid platform and on premises they're using Ontap of a certain release, and that's what's certified for that application environment, as they go to AWS, they're probably going to want to have control of Cvo to make sure that it fits in that kind of control, that certified architecture. Whereas, of course, with Fsx for Ontap, it's, well, you pass over that. It's, if you want to describe that, that's actually something you don't worry about because that's kind of taken care of, right?
That's right. This is where some of the anxiety comes from.
Yes.
Right? And it's understood. And we have to be very thoughtful in how we speak to that concern and evolve people past that worry, that skill, if you would, and let them focus in on things other than the infrastructure. So Fsx was conceived to ensure we could provide customers with fully managed versions of third-party, now first-party, file systems, as well as open source file systems, so that they would have a like-for-like experience when they brought their workloads and use cases to AWS.
Yeah.
And we know from the customers that we've shared for years that not having to recertify, not having to requalify an application against a new unknown file system or unknown data management platform is critical to them. It's hard work, and it's time that they could use better somewhere else. So the like-for-like experience is hugely important. And that's one of the questions I've been getting all week, which is, so tell me what I can't do.
Right.
Or it can't possibly work that way. And the answer is you can do that, and it works exactly that way.
Yeah.
So we need to do a lot of work together to get people there. But the fundamental difference between CVO and Fsx then is everything that was CVO, everything that is CVO, you can do in Fsx.
Yes.
You just don't have to worry about managing the infrastructure. You don't have to worry about patching. You don't have to worry about upgrading. You don't have to worry about the security of that infrastructure, because all of that is taken care of for you. Yes, do you know, or can you dictate what version of Ontap that you're running with in Fsx? Well, there's a maintenance window, and we will tell you when the maintenance window is, and it's a non-disruptive maintenance window, and you can decide that you can hold off on that maintenance window, you know, for some period of time.
Yeah.
But my recommendation, don't. Let the cloud people do what they do best, which is to ensure that your infrastructure is there for you, is running, is backward compatible with your application, and just focus in on the things that are important to adding value to your business.
Is Ontap priced with a base license and then capacity on top, or is it a true pay-as-you-go offering?
Excellent question. And this is the nature of a lot of the questions I hear this week. Right? Though the documentation says, and though our PowerPoint presentations say, there's a mental model there that people are trying to get past. So the simple answer is you pay for what you use. So you pay for the capacity you use, you pay for the throughput you use, and if you want more IOPS than what comes with that throughput, you pay for a few more IOPS. That's it.
Right.
If you want to back it up, pay for the backup storage. You want to replicate, you pay for the replicated storage. Not a complicated model, you do not pay for the license.
It feels like we've moved on from the cloud kind of mandates, if you like. I saw an awful lot of companies and spoke to an awful lot of companies where it was a question of, we're going cloud first. And you'd say, well, what's the strategy for doing that? And they go, oh, Amazon. Well, what you've got there is a destination, not a strategy, so why are you doing it? And you'd kind of push, and it was quite clear that it had sort of been floated down from a very high level, probably as a view that it'll reduce costs. I'm not seeing so much of that now. I'm sort of seeing it's gone from cloud first exclamation to cloud first question mark, where people say, should we, could we? It's more of, if we're going to do something new, then cloud first, right? And I think that's a really healthy approach to take, is to always ask the question and get people to say, if we should, then okay, why? And if you say we shouldn't, why shouldn't we? And I feel there's been that maturing of the kind of the mandates that were maybe not as well thought through as they could have been, to now people are really starting to embed it as we have to ask the question. And if the question is no, there needs to be a good reason why. And if the answer is yes, then let's see what the benefits are. Have you sort of seen that change as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna yes, and I'm gonna refer to Amazon has a set of leadership principles. I'm sure you've heard of them. Yeah. We have 16 principles.
Don't ask me to repeat them.
I will not repeat all of them, but one of them here is really important for this question. That's ownership. People need to have and want to have ownership over their destiny. And when a mandate comes down, that's not ownership. That's a directive. And certain people respond well to directives, and certain people do not respond well to directives. The people who prefer not to have directives generally are strong owners. They're strong owners of a result. They're strong owners of their customers' happiness. And they want to engage something based on understanding the value. So what we're seeing now is really intelligent conversations, and we saw those before too, but now all the conversations I've had this week have been incredibly engaging, because people are asking hard questions to which you can engage and provide them with substantial answers.
Yeah.
And that motivates those owners to move faster than any mandate ever could.
Yeah.
Now, organizationally, you then need executive sponsorship. You need the resources. So you, as organizations, it's not really about mandate. It's about sponsorship. It's about support. It's about letting those owners use the tools that we give them, use the opportunity we give them to do amazing things. They will outstrip any mandate.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you, Wayne, for sharing your time with us. It's always insightful chatting with you. So, okay, we'll shift gears now to see how you can get started in AWS with NetApp Cloud Manager. We're going to see how Cloud Manager can orchestrate Ontap to help you extend on-premises unstructured data, migrate enterprise workloads, and launch modern Kubernetes applications with ease. So let's take you through a quick demo. Hi there, what I'm going to show to you is our Cloud Manager tool and how this interacts with Amazon Web Services and some of the storage capabilities of AWS. So first of all, you're looking here at the canvas, and you can already see that we've discovered an Amazon S3 bucket, or a region with a number of buckets in it, and that's because we've created a connector. If you look up here, you can see the connector, and what this is a connector from the Cloud Manager environment using your AWS credentials, and with that in place, effectively means we can discover those existing storage resources and of course create new ones as well. So I'll go to add a working environment, and as you can see, we can add working environments across all of the major hyperscalers, but we'll focus on AWS. And now you get to choose what type of storage, what type of endpoint is it that you want to create within AWS. Is it a single Cloud Volumes Ontap instance, an HA pair, or our latest service, the Amazon Fsx for Ontap? So we'll create a Cloud Volumes Ontap instance, and we'll give that a name. We'll call it AWS test, and we obviously need to give it a password, and we'll click continue. So there's a number of capabilities we can layer on top of this storage service. I'm just going to switch these off for now, but I will come back to one or two of them a little bit later on in the demo. We get to choose the region that this is going to run in. I'll leave the defaults for this and some of the connectivity and security. Again, I'll just go with the defaults for now. We'll let AWS manage the encryption. And how do we want to pay for this? Pay as you go, bring your own license, or we offer a freemium version for up to 500 gig worth of storage. So we'll just go with the pay as you go version. And then we get to choose what workload we're looking to support. So this effectively will be the virtual machine type that will sit behind the Cvo instance. So you can see here for a database and application data workload, we're going to recommend an M5.2x large. So we'll choose this as our workload. I'm not going to create a volume at this point. All I want to do is create a Cvo, a NetApp system inside AWS for us to do something with later. So we can skip creating a volume. We can confirm that we're happy with all the details. And while I'm on this page, it's worth noting that if you show the API request, you could grab this and post this into Terraform or some other higher level kind of orchestration framework such that you can drive all of what we're showing you here through APIs. So I'm happy with the details. We'll click go. And then we need to just give that a few seconds. It's now effectively bringing online the MD5.2x large instance, and it's going to layer the Cvo instance on top of that. But while it's bringing that online, let's add another working environment. And this time we'll add an Fsx for Ontap. Again, this is just a demo environment I'm using here, so we'll just go with the default credentials that we've got. I'll call this Fsx test. And of course, we need to give it a password as well. And then we get to choose where we want the nodes, the different availability zones that we're going to run in. And I'll keep this in the same region as we did before. And we'll pick US East and 1A and 1B. And we don't need a CIDR range. That's optional for this one. It's already discovered it. It's already got it ready for us to be able to use. So if we click next, again, we'll let AWS manage the encryption. We get to choose how much capacity we want. I'm not going to go crazy. I'll just make it 10 terabytes. And I won't specify an IOPS value here, albeit that we could specify different values if we wanted to. And there we go. There's the details. So if we add that, and give it a second, and there it is. You can see that's already come online as well. And this was the system that we created earlier, the Cvo instance as well. So as you can see, it's incredibly simple for us to not just bring online S3 endpoints inside Amazon, but also to bring online Cvo instances and our latest offering, the first party service inside Amazon Web Services, Fsx for Ontap. Now, there's lots of things that we could do with this. We can go into these different environments. And as we go into them, we're able to start creating various operations. We could add additional volumes. As I mentioned before, I didn't create a volume in this Cvo instance. If I wanted to, I can simply add a volume. We'll call it AWS test again, or call it test vol. We'll make it 100 gig, and we'll leave the defaults for this. And again, just specify what sort of tiering policy we want in place, and we'll approve the purchase and give that a few seconds, and you can see our volume's already online. And with that volume, then we can start doing things like we can clone it to create multiple replicas. We can create snapshots. We can restore from snapshots that we've created. And what you can also see up here is a little kind of defender shield. If we click this, it gives us the ability to activate some basic ransomware protection. So enabling snapshot copy protection, but also activating F policy, which means we'll block the sort of known denied file names, or the known file names that we associate with ransomware as well. And we can do that regardless of whether that's Fsx for Ontap or whether that's the Cvo instance. So let's go back to our canvas, and I'll show you one last thing before I finish, and that's data sense. What data sense allows us to do is we can configure data sense that it starts discovering lots of different, any of these different storage endpoints. So if we go to configuration, you can see here I can add different data sources. Any file share, database servers, OneDrive accounts, S3 accounts. And once we've added these data sources in, Cloud Data Sense will then start scanning the data that exists on those sources. At a high level, it'll provide us governance. It'll give us a visibility to understand what data is on there, how much of it is stale, how much of it is not business related, how much of it is duplicate. It'll also go further into start helping you to understand, inside this as Amazon S3 container, how much of the data is sensitive, personal, extremely personal, sensitive personal. How old is the data? How big is the data? What different file types are we using? And all of these items are actionable. If we wanted to know everything that was over 7 years old, we click on 7 years old, and that will then give us a list of all of the different files that we've been searching across these endpoints that meet that criteria. This is a great way for you to be able to start to understand what your data landscape looks like. Whether you've got old data, whether you've got duplicate data, or whether you've started to put sensitive data maybe into areas where you shouldn't be looking at it or where it shouldn't be stored. So that's a very high level view of Cloud Manager working with Amazon Web Services.
And there you have it, an intuitive control plane that lets you take advantage of an impressive array of data services. But now let's focus on data protection. Regardless of where your application data resides, Fsx for Ontap provides your data protection and data recovery needs. So here's AWS Fatima Kamal, and she's going to take us deeper into this.
SnapMirror within Fsx Ontap lets you replicate data from a primary file system to a secondary file system across different accounts or regions within AWS or even from on-premises. It creates a replica of your primary storage for DR purposes, and that data gets mirrored at the volume level or at the block level. You can use SnapMirror when you want to set up DR site in a different account or a different region. SnapVault is also a NetApp Ontap technology, but it is more of an archiving technology. It stores snapshot copies whether or not they currently reside in the source file system. It is very much applicable in times of audit when you need access to that historical data. You can keep monthly snapshot copies of your data for over a 20-year span, depending on your business regulatory requirements. SnapMirror retains the most recent copies of your data, and SnapVault retains the copies for a longer period of time. Fsx Backup is built in and it is fully managed. You can run backups of your volumes within the Fsx file system without even having a file system provision to perform the restores. So this can be done via Fsx console or the API to create a backup of volume and have it restored onto the same file system or onto a different file system. So you do not essentially need to have something provisioned to perform the restore. This is an architecture diagram of SnapMirror between the primary file system and the secondary file system. So in order to get this set up, what you need to do is ensure that the VPCs in both these accounts are paired, right? And the routes are in place for these two file systems to communicate to each other. Once a VPC pairing is complete, we move on to cluster pairing. Cluster pairing is where you are letting both the file systems communicate to each other using something called an intercluster IP addresses. These are provisioned when your file system gets provisioned. Once a cluster pairing is completed, we move on to something called an Svm pairing or a Vserver pairing. Vserver pairing is where the source vServer in the source file system and the destination vServer in the destination file system are paired. Once the vServer pairing is complete, we create a SnapMirror relationship using the source vServer and the source volume and the destination vServer and the destination volume. We can also add on more parameters like the throttle. If you're running SnapMirrors at scale, you can throttle the SnapMirrors at a per stream level or at a global level using a global option for that particular file system. You can also specify parameters like schedule or retries or your tiering policy. Everything can be defined in the SnapMirror relationship that you create. Once a relationship is created, you have to initialize that relationship to initiate that baseline transfer. The first baseline transfer is going to run for a period of time depending on the amount of data you have in the source file system that needs to be replicated to the destination file system. But once that baseline transfer is completed, every subsequent transfer is incremental, and it can be automated by putting in a schedule depending on your RPO requirements. So let's say if your RPO is every 12 hours, then you can put in a schedule to ensure that your SnapMirror updates once every 12 hours and your RPO is met. So let's move on to the demo. And in this demo, I'm going to show you how to set up the SnapMirror between two different accounts and two different regions. Let's get started. We are now going to see how to set up Fsx backups of the volumes within the Fsx Ontap file system. To do the backups of the volumes within the Ontap file system, browse on to volumes under the Amazon Fsx console. Select the volume here and click on Actions. Say Create Backup. You can give it a backup name. And this has started creating the backup process. So when I go into the backups, I will start seeing the user initiated backup in here. As you can see now, the backup job is completed. It took roughly 15 minutes to run a backup of 500 GB volume. Remember, these are offline backups. So even if your volume or your file system is not available, these backups will be available to you that you can restore to a different file system. So to perform a restore, click on Backup Name and Actions and say Restore Backup. So what this is doing is it's going to spin up a new volume using the backup that is just created. Given the volume name and the junction path, the volume size, the storage efficiency, and the capacity pool tiering all gets pre-filled based on the parent volume configuration. Confirm. So what this is doing is it's creating a new volume. So if you go into the volumes, you can see that the new volume is just getting created. You can mount this volume in order to access those files. Once the volume creation is completed, we can now mount this volume and check the contents of this volume. So let us go into the terminal session. As you can see here, the volume has a junction path active and it has a use size of 506 GB. We're going to mount this volume to check it. Here is the 507 GB that we restore that we can access through this mount point. We can perform the backups using Fsx Ontap console or even using the API. So now let's move on to the demo of the SnapMirror. I'm now logged on to the AWS Management Console of the source account in the Oregon region, US West 1, and let's select Fsx Ontap. This is the Fsx Ontap console, and I already have an Fsx Ontap file system created. This is the management endpoint IP address and the intercluster IP addresses we would be using for the cluster pairing process. I do have two storage virtual machines provisioned here. One is for SMB attached to an Active Directory database, and another one exclusively for NFS. I do have some pre-existing volumes here, and I would be using one of them to demonstrate a SnapMirror setup. So let's now go on to the destination account and the destination file system. So this is my destination account in the destination region, Ohio. Let's select Fsx. And I already have an Fsx Ontap DR file system created in here for DR purposes. And there is a storage virtual machine as well. We will be creating volumes for data protection to start the SnapMirror process. Before we get started, we need to ensure that both the VPCs are paired so we can go about with our cluster pairing and the Svm pairing. To get the VPCs paired on both the accounts, go into Services and VPC, and you would have to ensure that your VPCs that you're pairing are from a different IP CIDR range. So here I have on my source account a default stout VPC in the 172.31.0.0/16 range, and in the destination I am going to browse into the VPC, and this is a VPC that we'll be pairing against. So to do that, select VPC pairing connections, and I already have a connection paired. To create a pairing connection, it's a very simple process. Given a name, select the local VPC that you want to pair with. If it is within the same account, you can leave it the default, or you can provide the account ID of the destination account. Also select the region of that particular VPC and put in the VPC ID. And this will create a pairing connection. You will have to go into the source account and accept this pairing connection for the pairing to get established across both the VPCs. Once the pairing connection is completed, you can go into the route table and ensure that there is a route for the Fsx file system IP range. So here, there is a route in place using the pairing connection. I am going to test the same on the source account under route tables, go into the route table, and go into the routes, and I do see a route entry for 10.0.0.0/16 using the pairing connection. So once this is established, a quick check would be to run a ping test using 2 EC2 instances on both the accounts. If the ping test is successful, you are now set on the VPC pairing and you can move on to the cluster pairing. So to do that, we need to log into the Fsx Ontap file system using the CLI to access the Ontap CLI. So let's browse into the Fsx Ontap file system, and this is on my source account. So I do have a management endpoint IP address. So this is the endpoint IP address I would be using to SSH into the Fsx admin file system. So copy this and let's start the terminal session. I am now logged into the EC2 instances in both the Oregon region and the Ohio region, which I would be using to SSH into the Fsx Ontap file system. So using the management endpoint IP address and using the Fsx admin user account, I have now SSH'd into the file system. So to establish cluster pairing between the two file systems, I need to find out the intercluster IP addresses of both the file system to complete the cluster pairing command. To do that, let's do a network interface show and list the intercluster IPs of the file system. And here are the intercluster IPs. For cluster pairing, I'm using a cluster pair create command using the intercluster IPs of the destination file system for SnapMirror as an application. It will ask me to enter a passphrase. You will have to remember this passphrase to do the same thing on the destination file system. So let's do the cluster pair create on the destination file system. Once the cluster pairing is completed, you can issue a cluster pair show to see if the cluster pairing is established. And you can do the same thing on the source file system as well. Let's move on to the Vserver pairing. To complete the Vserver pairing, we provide in the destination vServer, the source vServer, providing the pair cluster name. As you can see, the pair is created. So this is now in the initializing state. When I go into the source, I should be able to accept this pairing request. So this is in pending. To accept this request, I would issue a vServer pair accept command, and the vServer is now paired. Once the vServer is paired and the status looks available on both the file systems, I will be creating a volume as the destination for this data protection. This is the volume create command used to create a destination volume for the SnapMirror. The type of the volume has to be DP, which stands for data protection. The size of the volume has to be the same size as the source or bigger. So once this volume is created, we will start the SnapMirror relationship between the two file systems. The SnapMirror relationship can be created by providing the source path, which is the source vServer, the source volume name, the destination vServer, the destination volume name, and the vServer of the destination file system. The throttle provided here is unlimited, but you can change this to a desired value measured in kilobytes per second. The SnapMirror relationship is now created. As you can see, it is in an uninitialized state. To perform the initial baseline transfer, we need to do a SnapMirror initialize command. To modify the schedule of this particular SnapMirror, you can modify the relationship and add in the schedule. So the SnapMirror is going to get updated based on the schedule, and that can be defined by your RPO. I have put in a schedule of hourly, which means this SnapMirror will update every hour onto my DR destination file system and keep it up to date. I'm going to break the SnapMirror to make the volume read-write, and I can mount it onto an EC2 instance to access the contents. So SnapMirror is now broken. And you can see that I do have 659 GB of data on this volume that got SnapMirrored from the source Ontap file system to the destination Ontap file system. We just saw how to set up SnapMirror across accounts and region between two different volumes and two different file systems. To recap everything, in today's session, we saw how to protect your data using Fsx Backups for Amazon Fsx for Ontap. We also saw how to set up SnapMirror across accounts and region to use it for data protection in your DR strategy.
Fatima, that was a great tour of the data protection capabilities users can find with Fsx for Ontap. So thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for joining today's webinar. To show our appreciation, one lucky attendee will receive a Sonos soundbar courtesy of NetApp. Now, we're not exaggerating when we say that Amazon Fsx for NetApp Ontap is a game changer. Now you can run NetApp's suite of data services as a fully native AWS experience, improving the control of your data across your hybrid cloud. To learn more, I encourage you to explore netapp.com/AWS and contact us. And let's discuss how your business can get more from AWS with NetApp.